Greetings, music nerds, and welcome to Season 8 of the Music Makers and Soul Shakers podcast. This season is brought to you by our newest sponsors, Larrivee Guitars and Fishman Amplification. I'm your host, Steve Dawson, coming to you from the Hen House Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. This season, I'll be taking you on a journey down the many rabbit holes in the process of making great music. I'll be speaking to instrumentalists, songwriters, producers, up-and-comers through legendary veterans, and we'll go deep into their history and their process of creating unforgettable music. This show continues to be listener-supported. You can help keep the show going with a one-time donation or a Patreon subscription. And when you sign up for Patreon, you get an ad-free version of the show, as well as getting entered to win some killer prizes from our sponsors at the end of the season. We have an incredible Chase Bliss Lossy pedal up for grabs, as well as a Fishman acoustic guitar pickup and effects pedals, as well as a pedal from Union Tube and Transistor, and more. You can get links to all this and sign up now at makersandshakerspodcast.com. Meanwhile, many thanks to the sponsors for this season. Please check them out and let them know that I sent you. They are Larrivee Guitars, Fishman Pickups, Chase Bliss Pedals, Union Tube and Transistor, Spectra 1964, and the Hen House Hang. All right, thanks for tuning in, and let's get down to it. Howdy, music nerds. Welcome back, and thank you for joining me. This is episode number 160, and so glad you could join me once again. It's been a little while, but we are back now with Season 8, and we're getting it rolling this week with the incredible JJ Grey joining me. JJ is an incredible singer, songwriter, guitar player, and frontman for his band JJ Grey and Mofro. He's been making raucous, brash, soulful, janky, soul, and rock and roll records since 2001's Blackwater came out. I saw the band a couple times back in the early days, I think with Ben Harper probably, and man, his stage presence and the tightness of the band was something to behold. JJ has a brand new album out now called Olustee. It's on Alligator Records. I think it's a remarkable record, and we had a chance to sit down and talk about how it came together, as well as his songwriting and recording process, how he records his vocals with a $15 microphone, getting janky guitar sounds. Janky is his own term, as you'll hear. He likes that word, as do I. Along with self-producing for the first time, which he did on this record, and working with the great mix engineer Vance Powell on this one as well. So you can get all the current info on the new album and JJ's extensive worldwide tour dates at jjgray.com. So now, please enjoy my conversation with JJ Grey.
Is that an ear trumpet microphone?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, that's what we use for our horns and yeah, a lot on the drum kits. Love their stuff.
Yeah, they got cool shit, eh? And I mean, it looks cool too on stage, but it's like it's kind of a special sounding thing too. I use them a lot in the studio too.
Absolutely.
Well, thanks for doing this.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
So, where are you right now? Are you at home? Are you on tour? What's happening?
I'm at home. I just flew home. The tour's in the middle. It's kind of at the beginning. We've done 2 weeks out of the first 8, which is the first 8 week is the first leg before we stop and go to Europe. And I'm home for, I just came home. We had 3 days off. I flew home for a minute, and I'm going to fly back out in a couple of hours and go back out. And we're going to start back tomorrow night in Minneapolis at Alice Theater.
How big is the live band these days? Is it the usual, like you've got the full horns and everything?
Yeah, but it's 11 piece now. So normally for years, I started out 4, then moved to 5 piece. Then I was at 7 pieces for a long time. And then I just added 4 more. So we're at 11, including myself, 11 pieces.
Man, I toured with a guy named Matt Anderson. I don't know if you ever heard of him, from Canada. And that was a 12-piece band, and it was insane. I can't even imagine doing it like on that tour that I was on was like maybe 3 weeks, but man, you're just at it full time with a massive band. You must have a great road manager.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. I mean, we're on 2 buses, and so everybody's got a little bit of room, and we make sure. After doing this long, I realized, giving people space is one of the key ingredients to pulling it off. So yeah, for sure.
I'd love to talk about your new record, which I think is an amazing sounding album. And I know that you've self-produced this one, and in the past, it seems like you've always worked with other producers. And I wonder if we could talk a little bit about that, especially what really comes across to me, there's a couple things. One is that just the energy of the live band seems to really come through on this record. I would say, I mean, I hesitate to say better than before, but like it really seems to have translated this time. And then also just the kind of the sense of place. Like a lot of the songs are literally about places in your orbit, but also just like there's something Southern about it, but still like very contemporary. And I just in general, I'd love to talk about whether you came at this with like a concept in mind of a sense of place more than before.
Not really. I just kind of came at it honestly, like I always did, and always have, I should say. And it's sort of like the music happens first for the most part. Every once in a while, a song kind of get written in reverse to that, but normally the music happens first. And I'll just give you an example. There's a song on the album called Olustee. It's the title track.
Yeah.
It's about a forest fire. But when I did the music, I did the entire music like you hear it, with the horn break, with the ping pong and sax stuff and all that stuff. I did it all here at the house with sample some keyboards and stuff like that. Keyboard sound doesn't sound great, but the idea was all there. And then I played guitars to it. So the guitars, most of the rhythm guitar that you hear on the album is the actual rhythm guitar from the demo that I made.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'll back out of that in just a minute to explain what I mean by that. So when I do all that stuff, sometimes you know how it is. You've recorded. There's either it's demo-itis. One is demo-itis, and you just got used to it, or B, you never quite caught how the microphone where it was, the preamp where it was. When you go, I did that at the house, and I used the Ampex 350, the normal mic chain I use for just about everything here. And then when I went down to the studio, it was just like, I don't think I'll ever, I'm not going to make it any better than that. So why bother? So the band just plays along with it, the entire track. And then I just start backing out all the stuff that I had on the demo, just back out the fake drums, I play a little, 4 bars of a drum pattern and loop that. And, that, and then that's when I'm writing the song. So anyway, back to connecting it to a place, it's I had the demos done, and I'm just riding around listening to them for a long time, maybe and trying to sing to them, trying to be inspired. And every single time when I'm listening to that song, and I played this really crappy guitar solo at the end of the original demo. It starts out the same, with the same notes starting out the solo, but then then Pete plays a real solo, and then I play whatever on the record, but I'm excuse me, on the demo. But it just kept sounding like forest fire to me, and it immediately that was an easy one because I went through some of that before, so that one was fairly easy to immediately start seeing things. But the words didn't come till the last minute. But
oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, and that's almost the entire album. All the lyrics came in the last 2 weeks before I was scheduled to take the tracks to Vance's in Nashville and mix it. But part of that too was that I feel like in the bigger scheme of life thing that's beyond. It's only something I can hazard a guess at or theorize about. In theory, is that all I know is when I bought a new place, that would have, if somebody would have said to me a year ago, hey, or well, not a year from now, but a year from that point, because I bought it a year ago, oh, you're fixing to go in debt again and buy a building to have a studio in. I'm like, you're out of your damn mind. I just built a building right here. It's right there, that building in the back there, to put a whole studio in. It's 48 by 36, 20-foot ceilings. And, I was going to have it all laid out, control, everything I was going to do. And now it's just a big giant garage workshop. And, so I because I bought this other place, but I've been sitting here in a beautiful place where I get to live, and I couldn't come up with nothing. And then I walked in this building that used to be a boys' home for troubled young men back in the day. and I finally just set up a rig to record vocals with there. Just on like, well, I might as well try it here, see what it sounds like in this room. And then I say 2 weeks. It wasn't even 2 weeks. It was like 5 or 6 days the album was finished. Every time I walked in there, I got motivated. And I had a studio out in Maxville in the farm. I called it the egg room. It was literally an old egg refrigerator room, 15 by 15 side, and it was just a writing room. And I'd go in there and I couldn't wait to get out of it. I just couldn't wait to get out of it. I never could stand to stay in it very long. And I've been like that in almost every studio I've ever been in. I'm always feel like I just want to do a little bit and then leave. But in that place, I just want to, every time I walk in there, I don't know what it is. It's beyond, I'll just roll with it. I ain't going to question it. But that's another reason why I feel like the record took forever is because maybe life was waiting for me to get that place so I'd sing the right words. Because frankly, there's a lot of songs I had no idea what kind of cadence, what kind of and melody, or what the lyrics were exactly going to be about. Some of the songs changed at the last minute completely and utterly from what I had felt like they were all that time, and it just all happened when I got in that building. Deeper Than Believe, Olustee. Already had Part of the Sea, and already had, what's that other song that's kind of a sister song to that, the sea? On a Breeze.
On a Breeze, yeah.
Yeah, and Starry Night was from a long time ago, and obviously I didn't write Seminole Wind. That was already in the can. That one was easiest to do because I love that song, love John Anderson.
Yeah.
But a lot of the other songs, they all started, the lyrics came in the last few minutes of like.
Is that normal for you? Like, is that your normal way of operating?
Sort of, and I just didn't necessarily want it to be. This time it just happened. And what I mean by that is because in all the albums, let's just say we're going into the studio for six days.
Yeah.
And the first 5.5 days is just tone search, just like getting the greatest kick drum sound, or the snare drum. I want it to sound like the snare when Lou Rawls sings Sam Cooke's song, Bring It On Home to Me. I want that snare drum sound from that.
Yeah.
And I want that, and I just, this tone search. And I'm sure, as a musician, that can turn into a dodge sometimes. You just like, it's more fun to do that than it is to plumb the depths of your soul to finish the record. And so, and plus, I'm like, I just don't, nobody here knows. I don't even know what I'm going to sing yet for some of this stuff, even on the very first album all the way through. And
let me just get this straight. By the time you sang on the record was finished, like all the horns, all the strings, Everything was done.
Yes.
That's crazy.
Everything was done. It's just all instrumental. And for a bunch of those songs, like Deeper Than Believe, I had no idea what I knew. All I knew was I would do the chorus in my mind. Deeper Than Believe. That's all I had. Mm-hmm. And then I knew what that meant, but I didn't know how to couch that in lyrical terms. And so then it finally just happened. I just like, I don't know. It just happened. But yes, that's the way a lot of the records are. I'll ride around with instrumentals. The band will go play and there's no singing in the studio. I take it back, like the song This River. There's only a handful of songs that Starry Night kind of sang in the studio while we were doing it. But for the most part, I sing it later because I don't have any lyrics. Now there's scratch vocal tracks where I'm doing stuff that kind of almost sounds like the lyrics now, but you know what I mean? Like you're just kind of mumbling different vowels and consonants that make it, kind of sound like words. And hey, I have done that before in the past. I have done that on a whim and then got used to hearing that when I'm listening to it because I mixed in a little bit of the scratch vocal track. And over time, it starts sounding like words, and I start making them those words, even if they make no sense, because somehow or another, in the end, when it all comes together, they all make sense. The words make sense. Lock Loosa was like that. The song Lock Loosa was just an intro to a song called Florida, which is on Blackwater. And I just kept playing it live. And every night I just singing different words until it kind of stuck.
Really?
But for a long, I didn't sing words, just saying, just kind of scattered. And it took the words slowly but surely.
So does that put a huge amount of pressure? Like, do you feel terrified to like finish the record because it sounds like you've got deadlines with taking it to Vance Powell's or whatever. You've got to get it done. Is that like an undue amount of pressure on yourself to do it that way?
No, not really. I mean, sometimes I feel like, oh my God, I'm never going to finish this thing. But that goes away. I don't feel that very long. But in that minute, you could say, yeah.
Okay.
But then I got a short memory. Thank God. I'm like a baseball player.
And you just keep doing it again.
If you're going to stay in a game of baseball, you better have a short memory, or basketball if your shot's not falling. And I play both. So I'm used to having a short memory.
Wow. So you mentioned the song Olustee. Is that how you say it? Olustee? Or is it Olustee?
Yeah, Olustee. Yep.
Olustee. That song is terrifying. It so puts you in the middle of that fire. It's scary. The delivery is like so I don't know. There's something about it that is just like, holy shit, like this is really happening here. Tell me about that. Like, was that, I don't know the history of that. Was that a real thing? Were you there?
Yes.
Okay.
3 times. But it almost sounds like, am I a pyromaniac? But at any rate, one of it was not that bad. But one of it was my buddies wanted to burn off a brown grass thing because we were building like a motorcycle track. I didn't have a motorcycle, but a couple of my buddies did. And I was just helping them with shovels. We were going to make a motocross track, and they wanted to burn off this dried area. And I'm like, why burn it off? And before I could even say why burn it off, my buddies done lit it, thinking we're just controlling. But
oh my God.
None of them had ever experienced it. Frankly, I had experienced it at that point already once before, how fast the wind got it. And it wasn't howling wind. It was just blowing pretty good. And it just took off. And immediately, thankfully, it never got to the forest. It was burning under the power lines. And one of us ran and called the fire department, and they got out there and helped get it put out. And that was my second foray. My first foray was one of the kids in our neighborhood was a firebug, and he had set the woods on fire. And then they came and plowed it and put in the fire breaks and all that stuff. And they got it out. So we went down there the next day, me and my buddies, and we were actually going past where the fire was. We wanted to go somewhere else, but let's ease up there and look at what's going on. And there was stuff still smoldering, a little flame here and there, but it was all way inside the ash field. You know what I mean? So we didn't think nothing of it. We didn't run over there to try to put it out because it's like everything around it is already burnt. It's not going to spread. So we went on down where we were going. And then when we went to come back, it was an inferno. It was out of control. And it was coming through the woods and it was cutting off our way of getting out of there in a way. You know, I mean, we could have still got out, but we were trying to just get through so we could get somewhere and call somebody, but it didn't matter. The fire had gotten so big at that point, it was above the tree line and smoke, you know, that the fire department well knew to come. But that was, that one was close. I mean, we were less running from the fire and more running to get through before the fire got to where we had to go. Mm-hmm. So, and then the next one was it was in 1998 when the whole damn state was on fire. Every morning you wake up and ash was just falling everywhere. And I had to go up US 1 somewheres. And I got up there on one of these smaller roads and the police stopped us. I say smaller roads. It was still maybe it was US 1 because it was 4 lanes. No, it was 4 lanes. That might've been US 1. It's been so long. Anyway, the police stopped us and they're like, you can't go any further and the fire's coming. And they're like, okay, well, we got to back up and get out of here, but you can't because there's cars all behind you. And the police like, well, we got to start trying to get people out of here. You got to get out of here. Anyway, make a long story short, where I was, thankfully, the fire was coming from the west to the east, because that's the way the wind blows in the summer mostly here. And the fire was making its own wind. And this is, I'll try to wrap this up quickly, but it was a giant cow pasture on my left-hand side, which is the west side of the road. So I'm like, well, it ain't going to burn that grass. But just maybe 100 yards, 200 yards in front of me was a big line of pine and woods coming out that met the highway. And man, it came through there, dude. And that it made that all the other stuff I see look like child's play. That's where I literally saw trees just explode, man. And I've never seen nothing like it. It was making its own wind, and it was blowing so hard that you're talking a 4-lane road with a giant grass median, like on a major highway. That's the vibe. And then the woods are on fire on one side, and then the flames were reaching across, all the way across the road, it seemed like. And then it just it didn't burn the ground, because it did not burn the ground. When we finally got to go through, the fire was gone. It was gone. It was roaring on back still to the east. Wow. When I went through, I was looking, and it kind of burnt out to the grass a little bit, and then it was just green in the median, and then green on the opposite side of the emergency lane thing, and then black again. Somehow or another, just jumped the whole highway. Wow. Made me feel like, what good is a fire break when it's doing that? And of course, I got a friend that's in that forestry division for firefighting. Like, it's nothing, man, nothing. Yeah. When it gets like that, you just hope you can get things wet enough in front, anything to slow it down. But once it gets going, there's nothing you can do until it burns itself out, pretty much, So that was it. And then my grandfather had told me the story about running. They were literally muddying ponds in like early 1920s, maybe late at night. My grandfather was born in 2005, so he was probably 14, 15 years old. I think he told me when they were muddying the ponds. It was so dry. It means the ponds are so low, you could just catch fish with your hands and throw them in a tub. And I guess they were up near Ocean Pond. He didn't say what lake. I just assumed it was Ocean Pond, because it could have been Palestine. But I think he told me they were up by Olustee when it happened. And that's why I just assumed it was Ocean Pond. There's a lake called Ocean Pond in Olustee. Yeah. That's why I refer to it in the song. And it basically, they had to drop wash tubs. They had to drop everything and just run for their lives. He was telling me animals, everything were running past them as they were running. Oh, and then they just had to get in the lake.
This is all the Jacksonville area?
Yeah, this is the fires that I was in, one was above Callahan, between Callahan and Hilliard. The other ones, when I was in with the kid, was set the trail on fire on accident, or not on accident, but and then my buddy set the woods on fire. That was by my house where I lived in White House. Okay. And then the Olustee is probably about, I don't know, from downtown Jacksonville, maybe 65 miles west of Jacksonville. Okay. Out there in the Piney Woods, way out there.
Well, the terror of that situation comes through in the song, man. It's crazy. So,
and I wanted Pete. By the way, I said, Pete, play a guitar solo like you're running for your life from fire. And he did.
Okay, yeah, because it almost goes off the rails, and then it just ends so perfectly. Like, it's such a great.
Yeah, and I can feel. Not him. He's not stumbling musically. He's playing stuff that sounds like somebody's stumbling as they're running, and they're jumping palmettos, and they're tripping over roots, and they're doing everything to try to stay out in front of it. And it just feels like that. That's a lot.
So a lot of the record, it feels like I haven't analyzed this super close, but it feels like there's like a guitar on the left and a guitar on the right. Is that on purpose? Is that you on one side, Pete's on the other side?
Absolutely. And that way, two different rhythms. You know how it is. If 10 people hand clap, the more people feel it a little differently, the bigger the clap gets. It sounds better and better and better, rather than if everybody was dead on the money, it just sound like a bad snare drum or something. Instead, when everybody's clapping, you get that flammy effect. And I like the flammy effect of that chicken pecking guitar thing where they're flamming and stuff's just kind of bouncing off each other.
I like that thing too, where two people are playing the same riff essentially for a little bit. Los Lobos does that really well too. It's like, it's the same, but not, but it's, it's two individuals playing this.
That's right. That's right. And it's just you don't want it to get too flammy, but you don't want it to be so perfect.
Yeah.
It just sounds like a chorus pedal. You want it to sound like,
like two dudes going at it.
That's right.
So tell me about recording guitars for you. Like I can tell that you're a bit of a recording nerd like me.
Yeah, I am.
So that's good. So tell me about because the guitar tones are wicked. I'd love to know what you do for your sound. If you use the same kind of thing for recording Pete, like are you actually in there moving mics around and trying stuff out?
Sometimes I lean on Jim DeVito because he's a genius and he's a guitar player in his own right. The man that owns the studio, and he's got an insane collection of guitars. I mean, and an insane collection of amps. The amplifiers he's got, they have the original tubes, tans, old Fender tans with the original tubes, and older amps than that. He's got every blackface amp ever made, and they're not just. I've got one of each. Like he went on Reverb.com or somewhere, and bought old. He's been collecting since the '60s. So this amp. I couldn't get rid of it. He's gotten rid of the stuff that It's the same way with his mic pre's. Like he doesn't just have like whatever 24 channels of 1073s. Neve 1073s. He's got the 24 best out of the 150 that he's used over the years. That he's like, this was the best one. This was oh my goodness, and that's that way with every piece of gear he's got. Nice. Have sidestep a minute to really talk about him because he's a huge part of all that stuff.
Okay,
and he had this Guild T100D, and I played it on every album. And funnily enough, I went on a guitar pilgrimage for years to try to find a tone like that. And I bought everything. I bought ES-175s. I bought 335s. I bought, but this is a true hollow body guitar, and I should have stuck with a true hollow body guitar to get that sound. A winged guitar or a chambered guitar and Sting will sound the same. At any rate, I don't know why I just didn't go find a Guild T100D. It took me how many guitars? I got some good guitars out of it though. Before I just I bought two of them, and they sound phenomenal, and they're so janky, especially on that bridge pickup. And so that's what you hear on every record. You do hear a little bit of that. My Tasco. I've got the copies made by Eastwood that I really, really love too.
Yeah, those are great, eh? Yeah.
Yeah, and I use those live because the hollow body. I just never had luck with a hollow body out on the road live. A friend of mine
just freaks out on you.
Yeah, and he plays it. I don't know how he does at Walter Parks. He got a band called Swamp Cabbage. He's got something else going on now. He's phenomenal. He played with Richie Havens for years. He plays the T100Ds and stuff, hollow bodies all night, and with a sound that's as thick as somebody playing a Les Paul through a plexi turned wide open, and it never feeds back on him. And I think that has something to do with technique, and
that's a talent.
Yeah, how to work the guitar just right, and the volume knobs, and know when to do this. And he's just a master of it. But at any rate, the guitar tones on this album are for Pete's side. Pete was playing. I think he was playing through one of Jim's Princeton's, or Jim's got a plethora, of little amps that sound so good in the studio. Sound so huge.
That's the big secret, man. Little amps.
Oh, little amps.
That's how you get the biggest sounds.
There's nothing more time consuming and almost fruitless to me to have a giant stack or half stack in the studio. It just, unless you're going for that specific Marshall sound, then yes, it makes total sense. But if you're just wanting, like George Thorogood, when I went and opened up for him a whole tour in Canada, he's playing like hockey arenas up there, man, and his sound is monstrously big. It's monstrously big on stage, and it's a Fender, an old blackface Fender Princeton inside a flight case. It's kind of about the size of a SVT Ampeg flight case. It's mounted. The amp is mounted in the case, strapped into the case with a microphone already in it. All they got to do is just plug the XLR plug into the case, and it's sitting underneath the stage, safely tucked away. And he's just
no stage volume at all
on stage, pumped on the stage with side fills and stuff.
The sound guy must love him.
Yeah, of course. 99% of what you hear from my guitar tone is either and it's not a small amp really, is the Silvertone Twin 12. I got two of them.
Oh, cool. I love those.
Me too. And I got a small one too that I use more for slide guitar, but I was destroying them on the road.
They're just not holding up?
No, they
tour,
get beat up. Yeah, I had a flight case design where there's a head on one side and the backup head's on the other, and you just unplug it from one and plug it in the other when that goes down. So, but some of the stuff you hear, like the guitar you hear on Olustee, the main guitar, believe it or not, it much to the chagrin of some of my vintage analog nut job friends, and I'm a vintage analog nut job guy myself. Uh-huh. That is the Kemper profile that I made of my Silvertone. But I did the entire signal chain. I can't remember what the full studio profile. Hold on, my wife's just turned on the tea kettle. I got to go in the other room. Okay. I did a profile of my old RCA ribbon mic into an Ampex 350 preamp mic pre, like the old, like they used to use for chess records and all those kind of recording.
Yep.
And then I go through an original Teletronics, an LA3, not the 2, the 3. And I made a startling discovery. I don't know why it took me that many years to figure it all out. And the startling discovery was that I've been searching for this sound forever, going through amps and guitars and amps and guitars. And what I never realized is some of my favorite sounds. What I never realized was a lot of the coup de grace was the mic preamp frying, just being pushed a little too hot, right. A little buzzy, velvety, nice little, in a way that only that Class A or whatever you want to call it, that high-end mic pre does. It does it beautifully instead of being an irritant. So in the process of making the first profile, I had it too hot and it made my mic pre kind of set sail, so much so that the Kemper didn't know if I was doing a head profile or a full cabinet profile.
Okay.
Anyway, I stuck with it. I've never been able to recreate it again, even with the same gear. And so I have that in my Kemper thing. So I take that live and I play it through cabinets, man. And I A-beat it. And I've done a lot of profiles and I could distinctly tell the difference between a lot of them, but I could not tell the difference in this one. And it's just stuck with me and I've got it. And
so is that what you use on every gig, the whole gig? Is that profile?
Yes.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah. And it's very musical. In its own way. I can back off a lot and it gets really, really clean. Kind of like it does when you get a big amp and you turn it wide, because that's what I did for years. I didn't have any pedals. I felt like I wasn't good enough I can't even chew gum and walk, much less start hitting buttons with my feet and play guitar and sing. Get it. So I just turn the amp wide open and then I just roll the volume down and then play clean and then turn it up when I want to play a solo. Or the few times I take that on, but
it's the best effect pedal there is.
Yes, and this kind of had that effect. It had some of that effect without having to turn the volume up or down. You just play it harder, and it didn't come. Even though it went through, I never could figure it out because I had to go through an LA3, but I barely compressed it. That was more for tonal shaping. So when we got ready to The other day, I was trying to get a sound together for live, and I finally realized that the sound you hear on the record for Olustee is the Kemper. That's not
okay.
That's because I was doing it on the demo. I didn't intend to keep that. I'm like, I'm not keeping this. I'm gonna.
Mm-hmm. And is that coming through a cab, or is that just like you're plugging direct into the?
It's not. It's going. This was the secret sauce. I'm gonna throw it out there, and that was.
Throw it. Lob it out here. Come on.
It came out of my Kemper back into an Ampex 350 because I was too lazy to just reach around there and unplug something from my Burl and plug it in. I didn't want to do that. I'm just going to plug it. I'm going to unplug my vocal mic, which is going through this chain, and I'm just going to plug my Kemper in it, and I'll back the knob off a little bit. I don't want to crawl behind this damn thing one more time today. So I didn't do it, and I was like, oh my gosh, this sounds so nasty. So now I got to figure out, is it possible that I can take a Kemper and profile it with another Kemper going back to this whole thing again? But at any rate, that's the sound, man. It's so nasty, and it's like, man, I want it to sound like that. It's like, well, you're going to have to either bring an Ampex 350, which will get destroyed, and it's way too nice of a piece of gear on the road to be destroyed, or maybe you'll get lucky and profile it, and it'll work. I mean, don't get me wrong, the profiling stuff works, but I'm asking the Kemper to kind of. It's almost like asking somebody who's really good at something to just suck for a little while at it. You know what I mean? So that's because I like janky. I like on the edge of falling apart. I like shit that sounded.
That's what it sounds like.
Cheap in 1960, not cheap today. Cheap in 1960, because cheap in 1960 was nasty, man. That shit sounded good.
Yeah. Tell me the setup then for making the record. Were you guys, so it's crazy. So you did demos, everyone was playing to the demos, including like drums, bass. Was all that stuff happening live to the demo, or were you doing it one thing at a time?
No. We're doing it live to the demo. So what all they, I bring the demo in, I get it on a track, and then I output the click track from the demo to another track.
Yeah.
So everybody can turn that up or down in their mix where they want it from the original track. I mean, not everything we did to a click. Some of the stuff there's no click at all. They knew the songs from previous demos, and like Starry Night. I played that live on tour years ago. So it's been around for a little bit. And the first three songs, not on the record, but the first three songs that I recorded for this album were Free High, Top of the World, and Starry Night, those three. And so none of those are really done. Top of the World was done to a click track. But at any rate, I recorded those in 2016, the music. So, but get the picture. So the picture is there. Yeah, they can hear the demo, and they just play along with the demo. Everybody just plays along with the demo. And then as soon as we stop, I just mute the demo. And then what's left is sounds just like what was on the demo, except a billion times better and real and human and everything else. Demos always sound like, man, that demo doesn't sound, because the sample libraries have gotten so good. But, and I'm not much one for quantizing. I like things to be kind of a little janked up a little bit. But the guys just push and pull around a click track like it's nothing. I mean, I can't tell they're playing to a click track while we're playing to the click track. I have no clue. They're up on top in this part, and then they fall back here perfectly, and then they ease back up and get right on top, and then they push through this next part, and then back. It's like, man, I would, So the good news is I don't listen to the click. I just listen to the drummer, and then so I kind of stay time somewhat. But on that, I didn't have to do a damn thing because it was already recorded. So
right, and so like on Top of the World, you brought up that one, and that's got like, it's just so great. Like it's sort of like classic passing horn solos around and stuff. I haven't heard a song done like that for a while. Is that all live too? Like, is everyone set up playing together, or are you overdubbing horn sections, or how are you doing all that?
Had to overdub the horn section. The studio is not big, not real big, and bleed can become a real issue. Now, I want a certain amount of natural bleed. I really don't want full isolation. That's not the kind of records I like to make, the way they sound. I want some bleed, but sometimes, especially when I'm like, okay, I've done all these horn parts with horn sound libraries, like Mojo horns, sound great, but they're going to have to be actually really tailored, because if I'm playing a keyboard horn, I don't run out of breath. I can just sit here all forever. So some of the unrealisticness of that has to be dealt with. And so it's like, I'm still working out those parts when I get the guys, the main bulk. Like, we'll get pianos, drums, bass, guitars, mainly the basic tracks down like that. And then there may be a little bit of overdubbing here, like the piano. We want it like super quiet in a spot, so I might separate that out. But like Seminole Wind, I think Eric just played. We just cut that live straight. Everything was cut live except the horns. I brought them in on a second session,
and so you're doing all the horn arrangements yourself,
for the most part. But some of the guys chip in ideas too that are great. But I mean, I got most of the, like a song like Free High, dun 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 dun. That I built the whole song around horns and drums. I didn't even have bass or guitar. I just built everything around all the climbs and all that stuff. It was the horn song. I just did, and then I put the rest of the song around that, and then the guys come in and invariably things will get dialed in more when they start fine tuning a few things. Like that's not that's almost impossible on a trumpet. You can't hold a note that long and then turn around and hit it again. That you got to have at least a breath. Got to catch a breath. So I'm like, okay, so stuff like that we fix. And then I didn't have I didn't have the vocals because, like I was saying, it had the lyrics.
Right.
So I had the instrumentals, and then I came up with a lot of the chorus ideas because I knew eventually this is what the song is about. If this is the vision, this is what I keep seeing in my head when I hear the music. And then I got the girls in there to sing the parts. And I know Jim, the guy that owns the studio, is like, what the hell is going on? Because you hear sing stuff as though there's call responses going on, but he doesn't know that. Nobody knows. I know exactly what's going on in each spot. So I'm having them sing and then stop, and then sing this and then stop, and then sing and then stop. So and then when I got home, I could really play that in the car all the time and practice singing to it, and get a feel for it.
All that backup vocal stuff was done before you had the lyrics written?
Yes. I didn't have all the lyrics.
Oh.
Yeah.
That's crazy, man.
I had the words for the choruses done for the most part.
Yeah.
And then there's a song that's not on the album, but it's going to be like a bonus thing or something. I wish it was on the album, but it's called Let Me. And the girls sing a lot of crazy stuff in that, you know what I mean? And and without me singing, it almost sounds like, what the hell's going on? But then when I sing it made total sense, at that point.
Yeah. What about, you mentioned Starry Night, and that has that killer orchestration stuff on it.
Yes.
So did you come up with all that stuff first? Because to me, like, that stuff sounds built around the vocal, but you're telling me that it was that done before you sang it?
That's a great question. So it is built around the vocal. Starry Night, the vocal was done. That's the only song on this album, I think. Don't quote me on that, but I think it's the only song on this album that I sang in the studio and down there. Yes, I think I sang Seminole Wind, but I didn't use the vocal that I did down there. But Starry Night is the vocal that I actually sang in the studio. And so that was available. But Deeper Than Belief, and even The Sea, to an extent, because there's 4 songs that have the orchestral parts: Deeper Than Belief,
On a Breeze,
On a Breeze, The Sea, Deeper Than and Starry Night. Yeah. So I just went in there Deeper Than Belief, and I was like going, I just kind of did a melody that's kind of like the melody that you hear on the record, and just made up shit that sounded like words, and said, dude, that's built around that. And all that got started because I'm planning like maybe 2026. I want to do a symphony tour.
Cool.
Or just play with symphonies. And these guys have all played with symphonies before, all of them.
Yeah.
So they really know. I don't want it to be a band with a symphony with a giant string section playing with us. I want it to be a symphony, all of us. Mm-hmm. So my manager, Ivory, he knew this guy named Ronan Alanda, who's the guy that arranged everything that you hear on the record. And we started working on these charts. We got like 20 songs done. And then it's like, man, we should probably pick one of these new songs because by that time we'll have new songs on the record. Can you, here's the song On a Breeze. Here's one of them that's almost done, So I gave it to him, and he came back with these arrangements. Everything he came back was just mind blowing to me. And I'm like, man, I got to have this on the album. And thinking to myself, and then I said, can you send me the stems? Because they sent me mock-ups that were done with sound libraries. He's got a friend that does mock-ups that's really good at putting that all together. He sent me the stems, separate tracks. So I started editing things down that they did so it would fit more like on this album. Instead of it being an orchestra, be an orchestra playing with the band instead of one giant orchestra, because I wanted to have the continuity of a rock album or whatever, the whole album, and then except we have a smaller orchestra pop, because the pieces he's writing, when I'm getting these mock-ups, it's like 100 to 120 piece, which is mainly just giant string sections, bigger string sections, and maybe extra bass players or more than one percussionist, so a guy, or a lady don't have to run back and forth trying to keep up with everything on the book. So at any rate, I whittled it back, and I pulled this out or that out, and I kept the winds, the flutes for the lift, and I kept the strings. And
are you editing MIDI for this, or are you editing audio?
I was MIDI. It was all audio, but it was played MIDI on their end, but sent to me as audio, and I'm just editing the audio itself.
And then sending it back so they can spit out the charts based off your edits.
Absolutely. I say, hey, dude, can we do something like this? And he had a part that sounded so. It's the lift and the French horn parts in On a Breeze. It was only in there, I think, like once, and I'm like, no, this has to happen over and over again. This just does something to me every time I hear that wah 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 French horn in the background. He's like, cool, I love it. So and then once he saw about how much I wanted to have on a song, he went to work with all the other songs, and then I just sent him, here's a fake vocal that's melodically going to be very close to what I do. So I can tell you that. And then he just started charting all this stuff around, and the man's a genius, and he just crushed it.
Is he in the States?
He's in LA. And
okay, the symphony's in Budapest, right?
Yes, because he does a lot of film work and stuff, and he's like, I work with them all the time, and they're great, and they're phenomenal, and you're going to love it. And I'm like, okay.
And it's just way cheaper to do that, right?
Is that absolutely, why absolutely. They're cheap. They're way cheaper, but the way their economy is, they're living great. Even playing way cheaper, they're living. It's not like they're a sweatshop orchestra or nothing, So
so were you involved in the tracking session, or do you just leave that up to him?
No, I was involved with it. I didn't have to really. I only had one comment the entire session. It took one afternoon. And
were you sitting with the arranger somewhere in the studio?
I was in my studio via Zoom, just like this, but audio movers. I was listening to everything through audio movers. So
you had high quality.
That's right. And he was in LA with his assistant, same setup. And then any one of us could talk to the engineers in the control room. We could talk to the conductor and talk to each other. And Ronan,
that's so cool, man.
Ronan ran the session. The only thing I thought was there was a tag on one of the songs, like the final note. I was like, they're playing it as written, but can we change that and hold that out, like whatever, 4 beats longer, or hold that out to the end of the measure. And then funnily enough, Ronan and the conductor both of them said at the same time, I was just fixing to suggest that. I'm like, cool. That's the, and after that, other than that, I said nothing, and frankly, I didn't have to say that because they were fixing to say it. So they're just so on it, man. And I got misty eyed the minute I heard them tune up and they started playing. They're like, let's go to bar, whatever, in the book on a Breeze. And they started playing, dude. It was like, whoa, I was just so blown away by it, man. So blown away. Ooh.
What do you walk out of that session with? Do they just send you like a stereo stem, or do you get individual
all the individual tracks?
Instruments?
Oh my God, dude, you get a monstrous size stuff.
Really?
Yeah, through Dropbox or whatever. And it's like, because there's so many microphones. And then Ronan and his assistant went through all of them. Because we would do two passes minimum on a lot of the stuff, where we'd go muted, have all the strings, everybody would mute, and then they do one wide open. And that way.
What do you mean by that?
Muted, they can just mute their instrument a little bit. And
I see. Okay, yeah.
Kind of like a different tone. How you mute a piano? You hit that felt.
Yeah.
thing. It's the same thing. You mute. They can all mute their instruments to a degree.
Like the violins all put their mutes on. Like so.
That's
it's
right.
Just a different sound from everybody.
Absolutely.
Oh wow.
Absolutely.
Cool.
So they did that for almost every song. I think they did it for every track actually. And then we had the choice to go bounce between the two. So back to those guys would send me, instead of like 55 million tracks, they sent me, like here's this string section tracks, and it's like maybe 8. In the end, it might be 64 tracks total, which still sounds like a lot. But and then Vance would invariably submix that down, and but sometimes we wind up using the mute and the full orchestra to do a little bit of the same thing we were doing with the guitars. You know what I mean? 2 passes, but a lot of times we were using the mute because the mute would take it. The open would take it a little more into the giant Disney movie vibe. You know what I mean? And the mute would pull it back into a little more janky orchestra, but little janky orchestra vibe. So we had both.
I love it. Okay. You mentioned Vance. So have you worked with Vance Powell before?
I have not, but I just kept running into friends over the last couple of years. And I was like, man, I guess me and Vance Powell have a date with destiny, because Luther Dickinson from the North Mississippi All-Stars is a great friend of
I know Luther.
One of the best ever, man. And he's just like, dude, you need to work with Vance at some point. I'm like, okay, Vance Powell. And then I knew his name because Jim DeVito and Jim owns the studio where I've done all my tracking at all these years. They're good friends. They know each other well. And and then I ran into Reverend Peyton, and Rev told me, he's like, bro, you got to check out Vance Powell. I'm like, well, dude, okay. And I'm like, and then they had told me, he did that big famous song by Chris Stapleton. I'm like, well, I know the song. Sure. Let me listen to it from an audio file perspective, because track's killing, it's banging, you know what I mean? And then I really listened to it, and I was like, oh my God, I love the way this guy mixed, because I can hear the room. It's kind of weird. Yep. I can hear the room even inside a giant, colorful, lush reverb that Vance is adding. I can still hear the room. You know what I mean? And that's no easy feat. Sometimes it just gets lost. I don't know how you would even do that, but Vance has got a million tricks. He's got a trillion weapons, and he knows how to use all of them thoroughly. He's a full-blown samurai with that stuff, man. And and then one more person, C6 Steve, he was doing his yearly sabbatical, I guess, in Key West, hanging out, or he's down there in Key West taking a break because he lived in Europe. He's an American, but man, he's a bigger tape audiophile junkie than me. And he just got to talking about Burl, which I went and bought all Burl converters and stuff. But he's talking about Burl, and he was just talking about him and Vance were making a record at Blackbird or somewheres, or maybe they're doing it at Sputnik. They may have been a Blackbird. And he's like, this whole story about trying to A/B the tape against the Burl, and it just got to where he's like, dude, and C6 Steve is very specific, and I'm like, okay, like it was open, man, and I'm like, yeah, bro, because sometimes digital just gets so closed up for me, man. I can't take it after a while,
I got Burls going here.
Do you?
I know what you mean. Yeah.
So in a nutshell, that many people keep mentioning Vance Powell's name to me, and so I mentioned it to my manager, and he called his, and he's like, Vance is like, yeah, he wants to do it. So, and then we did it. So
are you into the mixing process, or do you like to just hand that off?
I'm a little bit of both, but more of a hand it off. And so I went up there for the first.
Did you go and
I did.
Be part of it?
I did.
Okay.
It was another thing. Precious little did I ever even have to say. And Vance is looking for feedback. You know what I mean? He's a legit pro, man. He's looking for feedback. Like, and it's your record. He's like, what is this? Where you want to go with this? And I'm like, absolutely. The only times I've ever had to, not even have to, it's just my. Could you put a little more reverb on that? He goes, I was just thinking that, or whatever. Just a few things. And then I was up there for 4 days, and then he had about 3 or so more days, maybe another 4 days to finish the record out completely. Because he was doing about two to three songs a day, and it might have been 10 days total. I don't know, but at any rate, I came home, and he would just hit me up, and said, "Hey, bro, it's on the deck. I got it dialed up. I'm fixing to mix it." And then he would send me an Audio Movers link, and I just put on my headphones if that's what I had, or if I was in the car listening to car stereo, which is the greatest thing ever to mix off your car stereo. It can't get any better than that. You know what I mean? The thing you listen to everything on. And you know, I texting. He's like, text me, "What are you thinking?" He's like, "I'm thinking," and he'd be like, "I'm thinking I need to turn this up a little bit." I'm like, "I was just thinking," you know, everything was always just what somebody else was thinking. And it wasn't, I really feel like I didn't even have to be involved, and it would have came out almost, if not the same exact way it did. And I'd have been stoked with it, but I was happy to be involved. And just, because like I said, people like Vance, man, he's a pro, and he wants to make your musical dreams come true while he's making his own musical dreams come true. It ain't just like, I'm a big shot, and the hell with you. That ain't his style, man. That ain't his vibe, man. His vibe is, I want to, man, I want to see that smile on your face, brother. And that's, trust me, Vance Powell put a big giant smile on my face.
Well, the vocals sound incredible, and that's, you know, definitely partly his doing,
a bunch of his doing. I have to say, there's a distinct difference between what I did here and what all my early mixes. All my early mixes, I didn't realize they were kind of upper mid and mid laden. Because I kind of got on a kick that modern day recordings are like the smiley face on the EQ. They all have low end and high end and nothing in the middle. So I just got in this thing of like, but my problem was every time I tried to turn a mix up to any real volume, they would start making the system go buffo. And Vance fixed all that because somehow or another he got the mid range in there, and he ran my voice through a couple of older pieces of gear, and it just, I was like, oh my God, it sounds so much better. I'm like, he's like, that's why I'm here, brother.
So as far as the recording of your vocal goes, was that just you by yourself, or are you working with an engineer, or are you just sitting there?
No, I'm by myself. I'm almost always by myself. And because
and do you labor over them, or do you just kind of do them quickly, or what's your vibe with doing that?
I kind of labor over them a little bit. I'm looking for that thing where I'm like, ooh, what was that? I'm always looking for that factor. And I may have to sing a song a bunch of times before it gets there. Usually it gets there by, not the third or fourth take. Well, that usually happens in real life too in the studio, but it happens about the third or fourth day. I come back to it, and now I've lived in it for a couple of days, and it's, even if I ain't got to sing it a ton, I might sing it once and then come back and sing it again the next day, or maybe sing it twice, and then come about the third day, like something starts happening. But I kind of, I labor over it a little bit, and some of it's tone. But frankly, man, dude, I don't have like a mic locker like Vance or like Jim DeVito or anybody like that. My mic locker ain't like that. But I've got, from about $4 or $5 grand older vintage mic down to a mic I paid $15 for off eBay, a realistic Radio Shack mic.
Do you tend to use the same mic for the whole record, or if you switched it around?
I switched it only when it just didn't work, and then I just thought, and I've tried everything, and maybe my voice just sounds different in this timbre. I'll give you an example. I sang Seminole Wind on a Blue, when Blue used to make like legit mics back in the day. They made that Cactus.
Yep.
I love that microphone. That's I sang that. I sang that on that, and I sang it in one of those isolation boxes where you kind of go underneath and come up, put your head in it. Something box, I can't remember what it's called. And it really put this low mid to, start to get down low range. That range where you can feel the snare drum in your chest a little bit. It put that in my voice, being in that box. It did something when I sang low, like on when I sang low on Seminole Wind. But it wasn't so hot when I was singing up higher. but I didn't want to change the mic, so I just kept dialing it in until I got it right. But most of the record, I'm singing through a handheld, omnidirectional $15 microphone from Radio Shack from the 1970s. Yeah, and I didn't do that to be
shit.
Yeah, I did not do that to be vintage, like boutique and I want this to sound super janky, although I do want it to sound a little bit janky. But it didn't sound janky. It just sounded so full, and I'm like, I'd rather give Vance or whoever mixes it the opportunity to cut than to have to add. And the song had a lot of mid-range bite in it. When I say bite, I shouldn't say bite because bite makes you think higher mids. But it was a little, it's above 1K, but not by much. You know what I mean? Or maybe just say center it at 1K. It puts the thing that a lot of people try to carve out of shit sometimes. But it put it in there in a way that was manageable. I don't know how to describe it because a lot of times that you know how if you want the really, really creamy cymbals, and I remember Gabe Roth, who is a friend, and he's a phenomenal engineer and producer and everything. And is like, do you know Gabe Roth?
He's been on this show.
Okay, yeah. He wrote a thing years ago, and it was the dead honest. It's 100% one of the best things anybody could read. It's called The Shitty is Pretty Principle.
Shitty is Pretty. Yeah. I talked to him all about that. I love that thing, man. It's like the manifesto.
So one of the things that is part of that principle is don't try to get the kick drum sound of a lifetime when you're trying to get great cymbals at the same time on a live kit, because by the time you get later on in the mix stage, you're going to blow up the mix. The other instruments they're going to shit out too far. So you bring the kick drum down, and then you just rest assured to know that when you slam it to tape, what you're going to hear back off the repro head is going to have the bass you want in your kick drum. At first, you're like, man, we need a little more bass kick drum. When you're sitting there having hit the kick on the microphone, it's like, no, dial it out a little bit, because we're going to add it back when we slam it to tape, that process. And somehow or another, this microphone had its own little weird process of adding mid-range without killing things. It was weird.
Wow.
So,
what about a song like The Sea, where you're singing really high? It sounds like you're singing into like a super expensive tube mic, but is that like that $15 mic again?
That's the $15 microphone.
Jesus. That's
so
incredible.
It's on a breeze. That was all. So I went and bought 3 of them, and guess what? The other 3 don't sound nothing like that one. That one of them sounds pretty close. Actually, one of them sounds almost identical. So I've got 2 of them.
What is it? What's the mic?
It is a. I can text you.
Is that top secret?
It's not top secret. It's a. It was actually made by. It says Shure on it. It's a Shure Radio Shack realistic mic, something 70B. Oh man. SR.
One of those with the cable permanently attached to it?
No, it wasn't that cheap.
Okay.
It's
the next step up.
Yeah. It's the next step up. It wasn't that janky. And it's I got a theory about it. I'll tell you in a second, but it's actually wasn't made to me. I don't know if it's made by Shure. There's a black one made by not EV, made by man, dude, my memory's terrible. Anyway, another microphone company made a black one exactly like it, same grill, same everything, and it's the same microphone.
Okay.
But so here's my theory. My theory is it's omnidirectional, but it's not. It doesn't. That immediately, and I was singing it in a room like this room right here I'm in. It's all wood and it's like really echoey, and it shows up on. You'll hear it when if you hear the bonus track, you'll hear it when I sing real loud. You suddenly hear the come alive. You know what I mean? I told Vance, he's like, dude, actually that's awesome. I love when wacky shit like that happens. So I'm like, cool.
Yeah.
So at any rate, I think the omnidirectional thing of it killed some of that cardioid right up front. Sometimes you want to lean in and have that bump of warmth, and it just didn't. It had a different bump to it, man. It just, and I just kept coming back to it, and I tried to get off of it. Trust me, I got old Neumanns, and I got all kinds of shit. I tried to, and I got well. Let me back up. I don't have RCA rhythm. I got the AE, whatever the company that makes AEA. And I got the big boy, and I got the stereo, the little capsule looking one, the stereo mic,
Yep.
a bunch of different. I love ribbon mics, especially for cymbals,
Yep.
because they don't recreate
Take the edge off.
high end that I don't want. They won't even do it. Yeah, they take the edge off. So yeah, it was a cheap microphone, man, and I just kept singing through it over and over again.
On the C, did you do the guitar first, or are you playing that?
Oh yeah. I did the guitar first.
Okay.
I played the guitar and did that part, and then Pete played it. Played a track, so I doubled the guitar, but then in the end, I only ended up using one. Felt like it was.
Okay.
It became impersonal the minute two guitars started playing. It started turning into, Dust in the Wind by Kansas or something. It started turning into something else, which is, dude, don't get me wrong. That would be killer, but no drums on this track, and that's not what the track is. I wanted the track to be huge, like that kind of 70s classic rock track without drums. But I'm like, I just kept every single time, I just kept muting tracks and getting back to my voice and the guitar. As much as I don't hate to hear myself sometimes, it just kept coming back to that. So I just wound up, and so the guys just played along with my wonky guitar track, but I played along with a click track to try to.
It sounds really solid.
Keep it reasonable for them. I'm sure. Yeah. I think I went in there and edited a few of my glitches. Just got rid of them.
Who are the singers that you really look up to as far as like when you're trying to get your vocal across on record? Who are the ones that for you are like the big pillars of like incredible vocal sounds?
Well, my favorite singer of all time is Otis Redding. And then my other favorite singer of all time was Toots Hibbert from Toots and the Maytals.
Nice.
And he's the Jamaican Otis Redding, and Otis Redding is the American Toots Hibbert. You know what I mean? They're just he's in a pod. Both soul guys to me. Toots the Jamaican soul, and Otis did his Georgia soul. Where he's from. But at any rate, man, I wanted all kind of moments. Sometimes when I'm doing demos, I learned don't try to come up with some bullshit name just to name it, because you'll never remember what that means when you see that demo in a list of 30 or other demos. You're like, what does that mean? I don't even know. So I start naming stuff after things I think it sounds like a little bit. Like the song Waiting, I called that Marvin Gaye. So it's for each record, and then I'll put the name of an artist or the name of a famous song I love or something that, inspired it. And On a Breeze, I had two people for that one. Lou Rawls, I really wanted to channel Lou Rawls, man, because he's one of my favorite singers too. Yeah. Easy singer like that, man, just killing it. And then, oh man, is it Julio? Who's the guy that plays guitar so good and was blind and Hispanic, and he would play a flamenco guitar and did a bunch of famous records?
Jose Feliciano.
I started to say Julio Iglesias. Sorry, Jose Feliciano. That was channeling my Jose Feliciano. But every record though, and then some of this is after the fact. I don't think about them when I'm doing a record. It's like later on, I'm like, oh man, yeah, I can tell that's this influence and this is that influence, and like I can hear Jerry Reed in the song Rooster. Frankly, I didn't hear it. The drummer heard it. He's like, dude, especially that last verse. I'm like, man, damn right.
I can see that.
Jerry Reed, all these years of listening to it, man. I'm thank goodness he couldn't show up as a guitar player in my guitar playing, because that man could play guitar dude, he's one of the best ever. Revolutionized Nashville. I can barely play a guitar. I know, but I want to play it like with his intent, not with his skill.
That's interesting though, because that's a thing. Like the intent. He's not like a precious player. He's like a ferocious kind of player. And so are you in that way.
Yes. I want to be. Sometimes I wish I could play a little easier, because it's taking its toll on my fingers. And I realize watching other people play that they're not exerting half the energy I am, and they're getting twice the tone and sometimes twice the ferociousness. It sounds ferocious and they're not. It's like, bro, there's a point of no return. There's a point of
diminishing return.
The returns started to get diminished drastically. I learned that singing too. I learned that watching Toots sing in the studio in Jamaica. I was in the studio with him in Jamaica once, and he was singing, and I was like, he sounds like.
You saw him in the studio?
Yeah, he sang on a record of mine. He sang on Sweetest Thing, on a song called Sweetest Thing, and so we just traded out. I went down there, sang. We hit it off, met at a festival by accident, and we just hit it off, because a lot of my family's from the West Indies, and he grew up country, and I grew up country, so it's pretty much the same, man, and so I went down to Jamaica. It was like coming to Jacksonville back in the day. It was, and I don't mean behind the times. I mean like more like giant Jamaica. Kingston felt like a giant country city, so to speak, instead of a giant, like a smart city. So at any rate, we're in the studio, man, and he's singing, and he's barely opening his mouth or barely trying, and it just comes out like a hurricane, like a 747, man. And I'm like, okay, now I see training wheels got to come off when I get home. This is real. This is getting real now. We're getting real now. So it set me on a quest, and it worked out.
Al Green's kind of like that too in the studio.
Yes.
I haven't seen him firsthand, but apparently it's like that thing where it sounds like on like I'm a Ram or something, where it sounds like he's singing so loud that the mic is distorting. It's actually, that's the way his voice sounds, and he's singing super quietly.
100%. 100%. Same way. Marvin Gaye, same thing. It just sounds loud when you go back and listen. You're listening to it, you just think he's hollering, and he's not hollering. I
saw that recently too with I saw Billy Gibbons play here in Nashville recently, and just sounds exactly like he did in 71. And it's like he's barely touching the fucking strings, and I think he's playing on like 8 gauge, like super light. You'd never think, and just it sounds massive.
It's crazy. I actually dropped down to 9s. I had a little bit of a hand problem. I hurt my hand a little while back, and I had dropped down. I always played. Well, back in the day, I played 11s, and stupidly.
That'll give you some long-term damage.
Yeah, plus my hands just weren't suited for that. It's what came on a guitar that I had once, and I just stuck with it. I bought a used guitar from somebody, and they had big old strings on it, and I just got used to playing that. And then, so at any rate, I had dropped back down to 10s many, many years ago, and then I dropped down to 9s, and I was like, what if it affects the tone too much? And Pete, my guitar player, is like, well, there's 2 arguments. The one argument is you drop down, it's going to make it thinner. But the other argument is it also vibrates more, so it makes up for it. So there's he's like, I've seen shootouts, and there's not a great difference, because eventually there's probably, you keep going down and lighter and lighter and lighter. You might run into it, because from 10 to 9s, I don't think you're going to notice. You'll notice the difference in bending them, because I bend strings. Yeah. I live to bend strings or bend notes, period, whether I'm hammering off on a keyboard or a harmonica. It's just, or my voice. I just don't know why. I never noticed it until somebody else pointed it out. He's like, you sing like you play guitar, like you play harmonica, like you play keyboards. It's like, I'm like, I never thought about it.
Can't get away from it.
Yeah. God almighty. Somebody slapped me. Wait, stop me.
You're on the road now. With this huge band.
Yes.
Is this like a worldwide tour? Are you going to be hitting everywhere?
Yes.
Pretty much?
Yes.
How long is it?
Yes. Well, so it's just going to go on into next year. And I'm somebody laughed and understand, and rightfully so. They're like, world tour? You're doing like 6 shows, 3 in Holland and 3 in England, and you're out of there. I'm like, yes, that's the first round. We're just going over there to touch base real quick, and then we're coming back home and finish out the rest of the shows around here. Think first quarter next. Then we're going back from the beginning of November or somewhere in October before Halloween, maybe, or something, all the way up to the day before Thanksgiving, or 2 days before Thanksgiving, and then we're going to do the rest of Europe. France, Germany, Spain, Italy, all that. That's what they're booking now. That's what they told me. And then I'm coming back home from there and doing a couple more shows around the States here. And then first quarter next year, we're going to the West Coast and finish out the U.S., get all the West Coast done and other parts of the Midwest. Or Texas. Excuse me, not Midwest, Texas, West Coast, and then parts of Canada. And then we're going to go after that, I think, to Australia and do the Australasia thing, Australia, Japan and stuff. And then I'm going to wind it down a little bit and then regroup and see what's going on.
Do you still love the epic touring? Is that
I
still
love it.
like
I love it.
something you do, eh?
Yeah,
Okay.
the group, the band, they all sound so good. All I got to do is show up. That's all I got to do.
That's
not blow it.
pretty
Just
great.
show up and not blow it, and it'll be all right. The not blow it part's a little harder than showing up.
Well, it's a killer band and a killer record, and man, it must be a blast playing with a band that big live. It must be just so crazy.
Yeah, it's surreal. I can't even believe it's happening, but it feels so natural that I get goosebumps, and then I just smile. It's like it's like you're cold and you get in a hot bathtub. At first, you're like, "Ooh, it's kind of hot," and you're like, "Oh my God, this is the greatest thing in the history of the world."
Totally. Well, thanks, man, for spending the time here. I love talking to you about your process, which is really cool, really unusual. It's not what I expected, honestly. Like the way that you approach it is so unusual.
Oh, cool. No worries. Hell, I thought everybody did it like this. Honestly, I figure like, I'm always wondering how other people make records, so.
All right. Well, thanks for your time, and good luck out there, and we'll hope to see you one day.
Okay. Thanks for doing it. It's great interview. Great
Thanks,
fun.
Man.
Thanks.
Music Makers and Soul Shakers is a bi-weekly podcast produced at the Hen House Studio in Nashville, Tennessee. Please remember to subscribe to the show wherever you get your podcasts and follow us on Instagram and Facebook. You can also find us at makersandShakerspodcast.com. Thanks again to our sponsors this season, Larrivee Guitars, Fishman Pickups, Chase Bliss Pedals, Union Tube and Transistor, Spectra 1964, and the Hen House Hang. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time.